So anytime I talk about these things, I always go back to what I call the five factors. Every bottle of wine is going to be different from the next. And number one, grapes. Obviously, a Cabernet Sauvignon is going to be different than a Pinot Noir than a Chardonnay. But then now we get into clones. And so when we're talking Pinots, or the Chardonnays, which clones? Secondly, the geology. And the geology affects the soils, which affect the nutrients that are taken up. And then also the hydrology of the soils. Three, climate. And you've got the macroclimate that you've got, and then the microclimates that you're going to have. And then four, the winemaker is very, very important, and how much oak do they put on something, or do they use stainless steel, or primary fermentations, what do they do, and what types of yeast, and there's so many things there. And vineyard management, do your rows go north, south, or east, west, and you have the vineyard oriented so it gets the morning sun or the afternoon sun, things like that. So all of those are important. Terroir is really the first three, as the French look at it: the geology, the soils, the climate, and then the grapes. And so terroir, defined by the French, and they've been using this for hundreds of years. We had our very first terroir conference in the United States last year in Davis. And so
that right?
I was one of four Oregonians that went down to that. I presented a paper there.
But people have been talking about terroir.
But a lot of Americans have just said, "Oh, it's the French thing," and the French have been talking it for years and years, and now people talk terroir in the United States. But but it took a long time to convert Americans over, and they would stress, it's the winemaker and it's the vineyard management, but a lot of guys say the opposite. So it's the total elements of the vineyard. It's the soils, the geology, the climate, and the grapes. So bedrock geology. And then in soils, what do we mean by soils? Well, it's the texture, how much sand, silt, and clay is there. Number two, structure. It's how all the particles are held together. And then depth of the soil, very, very important, as I'll show you there. And drainage, very, very important. You just don't want a poorly drained soil. And in Oregon, two different things: color and age. As a soil gets older, it gets more clay rich and it gets redder. And so the age of the soil is directly related to the color.
And you're going to talk about why it gets more clay rich.
Yes, it's weathering.
It's weathering.
As so the particles in the soil weather, the irons are turned into iron oxides, and they get redder. And then your silicate minerals break down into clays. Clays are a weathering product.
And so it's irrelevant if it's basaltic.
Basalts weather down into clays, and they get big, beautiful red soils, and then also clay-rich soils. Yeah. And so in Oregon, I tell people, if you're going to have a vineyard, it better be red soil. Because if it's brown, it's probably on the valley bottom, and it's Missoula flood sediments, and you don't want those. We'll come back to that. Orientation of the slope is very important. In Oregon, we want a south-facing slope, and the elevation is very important because you want the grape to mature. And so we generally say between 300 and 800 feet elevation is what you want. Above 800 feet elevation, in years like this year, the grapes won't ripen. And you need to ripen them. You need to have 23% sugar, or 23 bricks, in order to have enough sugars to make the alcohols. The rule of thumb is half of that number will produce 24 bricks will produce 13% sugar. And you need at least 11% sugar to kill all the yeast so it drops to the bottom and clarify the wine. Dick Erath, one of the fathers of Oregon wines, was a great follower of terroir. He said 80% of the quality of the wine comes from the vineyard. Well, that's overall climate. Just all of the winemaking areas in the world are all 30 degree, all in the same range, as you can see there, and the same range in the southern hemisphere.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just in Ethiopia, and they have vineyards there.
Yeah, many countries. what is it? Almost every state in the United States has vineyards and a winery.
Everyone does, actually, yeah.
So everybody's into it. I spent a lot of time in France last summer.
Oh, fantastic.
And so I learned a lot about the terroir that is there. It's interesting. Bordeaux, which is the most famous, those used to be all wetland soils. The prime vineyards, the best ones, the Premier Cru and the Grand Cru, are right on the river. And they back in the 1700s, they got the Dutch to come down and drain all the soils. And they really don't have any soils. They basically just have rocks and gravel that their vineyards are in, which is interesting.
So it's not clay then?
No, they have no clay. They have no soil particles. It's just basically gravel.
No soil particles.
Yeah. And it's interesting. And also you go to Châteauneuf-du-Pape, which is down here in the Rhone, or Beaujolais area, same thing. Burgundy is our area. That's the one that has the similar climate to Oregon.
Yeah.
And that's why the winemakers came here, and that's why the French are here. They have the exact same climate as we do in the northern Willamette Valley, but different bedrock. They have primarily limestones, and we have mostly basalts and marine sediments, but no limestones. So, and the French believe in terroir so much, they don't even put the grape on the label. It's a typical French wine. And it has, this is the evaluation of, how it is in the ranking there, the year, the alcohol, and the volume. This is the region, like the Willamette Valley. And then there is the winery that is there. And then this is the classified growth. And then this was made at the chateau, but they never put what the wine is, except in one region, Alsace region, which is right up here. They put Pinot Gris or Pinot Noir or Gewürztraminer or whatever. And they assume that that if it's a red wine from Bordeaux, from Burgundy, it's going to be Pinot Noir. If it's a white wine from Burgundy, it's going to be Chardonnay. And so they say, it's where it's from. It's not the grape. It's not the winemaker. It's the place. That is the terroir. And if we go to Burgundy, and this is in Burgundy, the monks there for years, starting back in the 1500s, they planted all these vineyards, and they had hundreds of vineyards all over, and they would test the wines at the end of the year. And every year it was the same. Certain areas always had the best wines. These areas had the next best wines, and these were the average ones. And then in the late 1800s, when they classify the main regions of France, of Bordeaux and Burgundy and Languedoc and a few other places, they actually classified. And these wines are what we call the the Grand Cru, the best wines. And then these are the next best, the Premier Cru, and then these are just the average ones. They were all based in Burgundy on the best, hundreds of years of tasting. And so here is a map of the Corton area of Burgundy. And so the best, the Grand Cru whites and the Grand Cru whites and reds are up here, and then the reds are here. And then the Premier Cru is here, and then below this is the average. And so we have the boundaries between the very best, the best, and then the average. Well, this last century, geologists came in and said, what's at that? And those are geological boundaries. And so this upper part here is all a pure marl, which is a type of limestone. But then down in the next zone, in the premier one, this is an oolitic limestone. This is the limestone, this is a marl, and then you get to the valley one, the average ones. Down here, then it's stream sediments sitting on top of limestone and marl. So there are geological breaks in between these particular areas.
That's interesting.
And so the boundaries had been set on wine tasting and flavors for years and years. No, I'll call them back if it's important. So that is terroir. And so we can say that these particular types, see, the climate's all the same, the winemaking is all the same, everything else is the same except the geology.
And it's been a long time since I've been to Burgundy. and I can't remember. I mean, it's like 40 years or something. And it's pretty open, so there's not like little microclimates. Like here in the Willamette, we have a lot of little microclimates.
None there.
So it's open enough where
all of the climate is exactly the same for everything. No microclimates. The only difference, and if the winemaker, of course, the winemakers are going to be different, but the techniques in the vineyards are mostly the same in all of them.
Yeah.
The real difference is in the geology.
That's interesting.
And so we can go to other places in France too, and the geology, the people in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, they say our Gamay, our Beaujolais, is better than anybody else's. Why? Because we don't have any actual soils. I better get that. Let's see what they. Hello, this is Scott. Hi, Joe. How you doing?
There we go.
All right. So I won't mention. Oh, and you know all of the stuff about Oregon. So starting out with David Lett, and I will go through. Well, so I focus in on the northern Willamette Valley cool climate ones with the Pinot Noirs, Pinot Gris, and the Chardonnays and the Rieslings and the Pinot Blancs. But now all the wineries are buying grapes from eastern Washington and southern Oregon.
Yep.
And so it used to be you would never buy a northern Willamette Valley Cabernet or Merlot or something like that because the grapes just never were very good. But now they're coming in from some great places. So Oregon is, and you got all this will be in your book, but second in the nation in the number of wineries, fourth in the nation in amount of wine production. So I won't go through any of that. But in a vineyard, what you're looking for, and people are always asking me, what do you want? Well, you need to have a place that has at least 180 frost-free days a year. Mm-hmm. Number two, you want to have mineral nutrients in the soil, but it's contrary to normal agricultural approach. That is, you don't want excessive nutrients. You never fertilize a vineyard. You want to have soils that barely have enough nutrients because but enough to keep the plant alive because you want to reduce the vigor in the plant. And so what it does is the plant puts all of its energy into reproducing in the grape and not leaves. If you have a soil that is nutrient rich, it just produces leaves and more leaves and more leaves. And with that, the grapes never ripen. And you are a deep doo-doo at the end of the year, especially like this year where it was such a cool summer.
Yeah.
And so this is the thing that drives all agriculturalists wild because they want to get nutrient-rich soils like the valley bottoms, which are just loaded with. And nutrient-rich is calcium, magnesium, potassium, sodium, and phosphorus. And so you don't want a lot of that.
So that was calcium, magnesium?
Potassium, sodium, and phosphorus. So, and you want to have slopes. Your ideal one is 7 to 8 degrees, up to 800 feet elevation. And then in the valley bottoms, you get a lot of cold air drainage and frost, and that's not good for the vineyards. So you have all these degree hours comparing California. That's the amount of hours where the temperature is above 50 degrees. And so Napa Valley and Sonoma Valley, 2,900 a year, whereas Eastern Washington and Southern Oregon, 2,600. Whereas the Willamette Valley is 2,000. So this is cool climate. But you look at Forest Grove. Forest Grove has a couple hundred more. They have a little microclimate out there. They have a little more warmth than the rest of the Willamette Valley.
Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah, this is work from Greg Jones. And Greg is a professor down at Southern Oregon University. He's the premier climatologist for wineries probably in the world. He's a professor.
And he's at
Southern Oregon University. He and his dad own Abasella Winery.
Oh, Earl.
Yeah, Earl.
Yeah.
So Earl's son, Greg, is a professor.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He's a professor of climatology. And you need to talk to him because if you're writing a book on Oregon wines, the guy is good. So climate-wise, you need to have what we call a xeric moisture regime. It may be wet all year long, but you need to have those 2 months of dry climate. It's a Mediterranean climate at the end of the year. And so in August and September, that's when we ask our friends to come and visit us in Oregon, because it doesn't rain. And that's what you need for great winemaking. So I got pictures of our premier grapes. Geologists always love to go out into the field. Willackenzie Winery, there's the co-owner of Willackenzie, is the only winery in the United States named after its soil. Why? Because soil is so important. And her husband is French, terroir. He said, I'm finding the best place, and we'll talk about the great debate. Here's George Moore. He's the guy that just died, and he just finished the book. I think he got it done, and got it. I think Oregon State Press is going to be printing it. But it's awful. He was killed in an automobile accident. And then this was the head winemaker at Erath, and he has his own one down in McMinnville. So you have the viticultural areas in Oregon, the traditional ones, and we'll talk a little bit about Columbia Valley, Walla Walla, which is out east, and these are the southern ones, Willamette Valley. Now Willamette Valley is divided up into 6 subgroups, and why? They're all divided up on terroir. All terroir. People in Dundee Hills say our wines are better than yours, and therefore, and they're the Jory soils, and those are different. So we're going to put that on our bottle. People of Yamhill County say no, we are on the Willackenzie soils. Our wines are better, and so therefore we're going to put that on the bottle. Ribbon Ridge said ours are Willackenzie soils, and we also have the local microclimate. We like ours. Chehalem Mountain saying, we've got a lot of Laurelwood soil. We like ours better. And then the Eola Hills are saying, we have primarily Jories and Nikaya. We like ours better. So terroir has divided. And it's really the geology and soils.
You have there's also the Columbia Gorge.
Yes.
Under Columbia.
Right.
Yeah.
And then so in the Willamette Valley, we went out and looked at we looked at over 200 wineries. Which had at that time over 5,000 acres in plants.
And what year was that?
We just 2 years ago we finished that.
Wow.
And so of course the numbers have increased, but we asked what are the major soils that are being used, and so these are the soil series names. Second area I have the type of geology, and then the third are the names of the soils, ultisols, alphasols, etc. The bottom line is most of these are old. I'm going to summarize what is here, but the 2 leading ones are the Jory and the Willackenzie. And that's the great debate in the Willamette Valley, which soil produces the best Pinot Noir.
Yeah.
And
you have a printout of this somewhere?
Hey, Karen? Hey, do you have, I think you typed up the list of all of the soils, didn't you?
Possibly.
Or
Check and see if it's arrived.
I think you did a word, or if you on my PowerPoint, I have those two. If you could just print those 2 pages or the parts of the PowerPoint that give the leading soils, and then we can give those to Janis.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
So so the 2 main ones are the ones that people have always focused in on. But the number 3rd one, Laurelwood, is on basalt bedrock, but it has the characteristics of a Willackenzie soil because of silt that is blown up on the side of the hill, what we call loess, Loess.
And so that's the blown up
Right,
soil.
right.
It's not the flood soil, but it's the soil that got blown up there.
Right.
Huh.
But it's old, and so it's weathered.
Huh.
And so it formed little nodules.
And by old, how is that pre-flood or post?
Way before.
Before flood.
Oh yeah,
Thousands
of years.
It was above. Like a lot of that is out in the Eola Hills, so that's above. Like I don't know how high the flood got, but it's above that.
400 feet elevation.
So it's above that.
Right.
That's interesting.
And so this is one of the hot new soils, Laurelwood, and then Nikaya is a very thin Jory, and that's a lot of it down in the Yola Hills, and I like the Nikaya as being a really good one too. So this is the second page, and then we found 23 different mapped soils that were being wineries, but then a lot of the Missoula flood ones, they bought the land first, planted it, and then asked what makes a good winery, and so they aren't really good. But you see the Dayton soil is awful, Aloha, Amity, not very good for that. So the great debate that we have in the Willamette Valley is which soil produces the best. Is it the Jory soil, which is on Columbia River basalts, 15 million year old basalts. All of that basalt came from eastern Oregon.
Now, by eastern, that's east of the Cascades. That's
Yes.
way out in eastern Oregon.
Where Oregon, Washington, and Idaho come together.
Okay.
Where the three states come together. You had magma that just oozed out of the ground out there. And then it came down the ancestral Columbia River through the gorge. There really were no Cascade Mountains at that time, but
those are newer then.
Yeah, they've been raised up in the last 5 million years. But it came down, and those flows went all the way to the coast. So every one of the headlands that you have along the coast, Cascade Head, Tillamook Head, Cape Lookout, are all basalt flows from eastern Oregon. So those flows came down here, and so all the Eola Hills, Salem Hills, that's a flow from eastern Oregon. Dundee Hills, another flow. Parrot Mountain, Peace Mountain, those flows from eastern Oregon. So they're really 14 to 16 million year old basalts, and so they've been weathering ever since that time. So they're nice in red soils and low in nutrients. That's the Jory, and that has been adopted by the soil scientists of the state as the state soil. We did that because it united the east side and the west side. Because the lava came from the east but weathered here.
So, but now, like in Walla Walla, like underneath that sediment, then they've got
basalt. The same basalt.
But that sediment soil must be fairly deep, and in the valley, it's like some of those vineyards are on rock.
Right, and I'm going to talk about that.
Oh, okay.
Those are all Missoula flood sediments.
Okay.
The Willackenzie soil is the second one.
Okay.
And those are out in the west side of the Yamhill County and also Washington County. Those are uplifted seafloor, uplifted sediments of the Coast Range. And so the Willackenzie, now it's been subdivided a little bit, but still the group of those marine sediment soils produce a different type of Pinot Noir. And when somebody pours me a glass of Pinot Noir from the Willamette Valley, I can tell you, is it basalt bedrock or is it a Willackenzie?
And what's the characteristic that gives
the basalt is very light red in color, and the fruits that are expressed are light red fruits, red currants, raspberries, light red cherries, whereas the Willackenzie is very dark. And so you have dark currants, dark cherries, blackberries, those types of things.
And why is that?
It's the soil.
And I'm trying to visualize like the two different soils. One, I'm just guessing.
They look the same in the field. They're both old. They're red. They're clay rich.
But wouldn't one be lighter than the other?
No, it has nothing.
Not.
No. They're both old.
Not lighter in mass. Weight.
They both are clay rich and they are old. As I said, they're red. And that's the key thing. But the thing is the nutrient makeup. Now, the Willackenzie has a few more nutrients: calcium, magnesium, potassium, sodium. And it could be those few additional nutrients that give the additional color. But it's amazing. And so I do a lot of wine tastings, and I give this talk. And at the end, then people choose what they exactly like. And it comes out 50-50. Sometimes the Jory has an incredible bouquet, whereas the Willackenzie doesn't quite have the bouquet. But the finish of the Willackenzie is incredible, I think, compared to the finish of the Jory. And so some people like one or the other. And so what I do is when I do these wine tastings, I keep the other 4 factors constant. I use the same winemaker, with the same vineyard management, the same grapes, the same year, so the gross climate, and the only difference is the soil.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. I give everybody two glasses, fill one with each, and then they taste them and they say, wow, they're different. The only difference is in the soil. And now, is it the most important factor? I gave you those 5 factors. Probably not, but it's one of the 5 factors, and it is important.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've been preaching, is that terroir is important. And now I've got it to the point that when people go out visiting all the wineries, they get the Pinot. They say, "What's the soil? Is it from? Is it a Willikenzie? Is it a Jory?" And the wineries have to know that, because people are wanting to know. Because there are some that just absolutely love Willikenzie soils, and others that just absolutely love the Jory, and they won't cross across. Now, for me, I like them both. But there's a difference. You got...
Oh, I was trying to be discreet.
Oh, no, you just give them to Janis.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank
great.
you very much.
Great. So,
Oh,
yeah, there's the
fantastic.
list.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. And what else? Oh, this is some of the other stuff I'm getting to.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So thank you, Karen. So so here's the Jory soil, and so you've got very, very thick A horizon, and red deep soil. And then now this is a little overexposed, but this is out at Elk Cove, and it also red, very clay rich. I got a bottle of wine there. In fact, here you can see the red colors coming up through the gopher mounds that are there.
And that was at Elk Cove.
Yeah.
And that's right,
Elk Cove is
Elk
Cove is a classic Willikenzie soil.
Okay. They're one of my clients.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And they're great. The Campbells are great people, just great people. And so what we did in our study was added it all up and said, how many acres are on basalt, pure basalt, 41%. How many on the marine sediments, like that. Now, basalt plus old loess. Loess is this silt that is blown up off of the floodplain. But it's old, and so it's weathered, and it weathers into little iron, they call it iron shot. And it gives a very cherry flavor to the soils, that extra iron. And so that's 15%. And then the rest of this are lower numbers, but Missoula flood sediments, not real good. And just pure old loess, only 3%. Young loess, that's mostly at this end of the Washington County, only 31 acres. And then mixed bedrock is 1%. So the story is sediments versus basalt.
So the Missoula floods, now I'm trying to picture where those vineyards are.
Valley bottoms. All the valley bottoms.
So that'd be like Montanore?
No, Montanore is up above.
Enough?
Yeah, they're high enough. Some of their lowest vineyards are that. But where the Spruce Goose is? That's all Missoula flood sediments. Howard and Dor. There's one I can never pronounce it. Howard and Doran.
Oh yeah.
They're
there's a number of
just right out in the middle of the flat
yeah.
valley. Just
Yeah.
Missoula flood sediments. Just too rich. They just have to get out there and just and Duck Pond. The Duck Pond Winery is on Missoula flood sediments. Right there. It's not. The soils are tan, and so I'll get back to the Missoula floods in a second. Here's just a list of the soils, and the important thing is 96% of the soils in the study were old soils. Anytime it has the ULT in there means old. Anytime ALF means old, but a few more nutrients. And so that's, I won't bore it, but 87% are well-drained soils, and another 10 moderately well-drained. And so that's what you need. Only a few of the white grapes can survive on the poorly drained ones, and they just, so you need to have a well-drained soil. Generally, red tells you well-drained. Why is the valley floor bad for grapes? Well, first of all, they're Missoula flood sediments, and there are just too many nutrients in it. And what were the Missoula floods? They occurred between 15 and 18,000 years ago. There were 40 of them that came down here. It was towards the end of the last glacial period, and an ice dam formed. So you probably know the story.
Well, let's go ahead and keep
okay.
yeah.
Ice dam formed that cut off the Clark Fork River, which was draining all of western Montana from the melting of the glaciers. Formed a lake that was 2,000 feet deep and over 250 cubic miles of water that was catastrophically released in a day and a half. Either it floated the dam or went over the dam or broke the dam up, and then you had 50 square miles of cubic miles of ice. And so all of that came rushing down through Spokane across eastern Washington, carving out those great valleys that we call coulees. And all of that silt that was deposited up there, called the Palouse loess, or Palouse silts, got taken up in the water, and then it all came down the Columbia River into Portland, filled us up to 400 feet elevation, carved out Lake Oswego and filled up the Tualatin Valley to 400 feet elevation, went between Oregon City and West Lynn, and filled up the Willamette Valley to 400 feet elevation all the way to Eugene. Did that 40 times, and in the valley bottoms, it deposited all that silt. It was traveling 60 miles an hour, so it had huge volumes of sediment that were there. Deposited it out. And then, so the valley bottoms, like down in Dayton and Newburgh, you got 150 feet thick of Missoula flood sediments. As you get down to Eugene, it's only just a couple feet thick. And so just nutrient rich, lots of silts, which have lots of nutrients in it. And so the energy goes into the grapes, not into the leaves, and just takes longer to ripen. And you also have the early frosts. I have the point.
Now,
okay.
So, like in Washington, like in that Walla Walla area, and then some of the Columbia Valley, especially the lower part of the Columbia Valley, AVA. A lot of that, like a lot of those vineyards, are on fairly flat areas, like Columbia Crest.
And I'm going to talk about that.
Okay.
So I'm getting to that in a second.
All right.
Yeah. Also, in Oregon, the hypothesis, poison oak hypothesis, poison oak loves to grow on south-facing slopes, 300 to 800 feet elevation.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and so I tell people, if you're going to buy a piece of property for a vineyard, ask, the first question is there poison oak on the property? If they say yes, you're looking in the right direction. Because it likes a xeric moisture regime. It likes the south-facing slope, which is very dry. We tried to prove it, but we only got 68% of the vineyards said that was that way. And the problem is, a lot of people bought farms from somebody else, and they didn't know if it was there originally. So,
well, like Napa is great for growing poison oak.
Yeah.
But it's a lot drier.
Yeah.
There it's like they have a long dry period there.
Yeah. And so the whole area, you got poison oak everywhere down there.
Yeah.
Here, the climate is much different, and so it's only found. Once you get up into the Coast Range or up into the mountains or into the forest, no poison oak. It's only on the very dry south-facing slopes. All right. So now you ask about Washington. So in Washington, 95% of the vineyards are on Missoula flood sediments. In Oregon, only 10% are on Missoula flood sediments. 90% are on the upland vineyards.
So that's above, how many?
Above 300 feet elevation.
Above 300 feet.
300 to 400 feet. There's an overlap area in there. And so why the difference between up here in Washington, they control the vigor of the grapes through irrigation. We don't irrigate hardly at all here. We control everything through soils and old soils. And so that's the difference in the terroir between the two areas. Of course, they also have a warmer climate. Yeah. And so the key to great wines is, first of all, to reduce the vigor in the grapevines. And so what do you do? How do you do that? Well, you have dry climate in the last months of production. And in Washington, they get that by irrigation. In Oregon, you get it from poor soil nutrients. And that is a major difference that we have got. So in Washington, as you go up the Columbia Valley and into the Walla Walla area, the valley bottoms, the flat areas, are all Missoula flood sediments. Then the hills that are up there are loess, the silts that have blown off, and they cover all of the basalts. And so the grapes are growing in the loess, not in the basalts. The basalts are underneath.
Are you familiar with, say, Seven Hills, the vineyard? Okay. The older vineyard must be all on Missoula floods then, but they're planting some new way up higher up on those hills up there. Some brand new, they just planted them. So I'm trying to visualize, would that be still floods up that high? Or
no, it's all loess.
So that's
all the loess. Yeah.
So that's going to be quite a bit of different kind of a fruit.
Yes, you got higher elevation, and so you're going to have lower sugar contents. But the other thing up there, the temperatures go up and down and up and down. And the more up and down temperatures you get, the more complexity in the chemicals in the grape, and the finer the wine that is produced. And that's one of the outstanding things about Eastern Washington. They get the huge temperatures during the daytime, but it's dry up there. Those temperatures plummet at nighttime, and it's that up, down that is so important.
Huh.
So those are the differences here. So still the leading favorites in the Willamette Valley is the Jory and the Nicaea, which is the thin one, and the Willackenzie. But the hot new soils are Laurelwood, which is the old loess on top of the basalt. And so it kind of acts like a Willackenzie, but at the same time has the basalt bedrock characteristics. Cornelius, which is Montanore. That's this old loess with these piezolytic structures. The other thing, we try and get people to stay off the Missoula flood sediments. Oregon controls everything by old soils. I talked about the poison oak hypothesis, and now the remapping some of the soil names, but the basic big picture still stays the same.
Okay.
And the new Willamette Valley appellations are based on terroir.
One of the things is said in a lot of young vineyards, and almost all of them are under irrigation.
Yes.
Now they want more control, especially in the first 2 or 3 years.
Yes. But what they're doing is, a lot of those guys, what they're doing is, after the vines get established, they are just not using the irrigation.
But like on a hot year,
right,
to kind of stretch things out through that irrigation.
Those are things that people are, it's a huge amount of money put in.
$1,000 an acre.
Yeah. And especially those early years, they want those plants to gain a foothold. But the other thing is, you want those roots to go deep. And if you irrigate, the roots don't go deep. And so I'm a purist, and so I tell them, geez, if you irrigate, you're really hurting the plant.
Yeah.
And let it struggle the first couple of years, and then all of a sudden it's going to find that water, and it's going to go deep, and it'll work out. So, but the vineyard managers, because everybody has a consultant, they all say irrigate, and that's more money for them, and there is some truth that it allows them to a little more flexibility.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I just they have to.
I keep asking them, how deep these roots are, and they rarely can I get
they don't know, because they have to dig down, and there's no reason that they're going to do that. What we have seen roots from some of these things that have gone 10, 15 feet down. Especially my favorite, down the Aola Hills in Salem. Soils may be only 3 feet deep, and then you're down into the roots. And I have seen roots from some where the road cuts through. I've seen them 15, 20 feet down in through the cracks in the basalt.
Yeah.
In vineyards that are only 10 years old. So,
where are good places to photograph like these various geologic events? Starting with the most recent, I guess, is like the Missoula floods. Like, where would you suggest I go to illustrate the Missoula floods?
Do you know? Well, up the gorge, any place on the other side of the Dalles, as you're driving along up there, you can just see how high the Missoula floods got, because the basalts are exposed below the Missoula flood limit, and up above it's all nice smooth slopes. And so that's showing you there are no trees around, and it really shows it well. Missoula floods got up to this point, and then above it it's the loess.
Loess are the sediment from the floods.
Well, the scouring of the Missoula floods coming through removed all the sediment, and that's below the line, and so the basalt sticks out, and then above it, the Missoula floods never got there, and so those are the silt that blew up there from the Columbia River. But to get a photo of Missoula flood sediments, there aren't any. We just got too many trees down here. Eastern Washington has got some there, the tushy beds up. I have another. Let's see. I probably. I think no here. I'll find a picture for you. But keep talking as I'm looking for this.
Okay. So we kind of covered the like the Walla Walla and the geological influences on Walla Walla. What about the Umpqua in southern Oregon?
That is, the geology of Oregon. Well, those are all the Klamath Mountains. Those are the Rogue, the Applegate, the Klamath, the Applegate, the Rogue, and the Umpqua. That's all the what we call the Klamath Mountains, and that's all uplifted ocean bottoms, very, very old rocks. Those rocks go back to 250 million years old. And so I'm going to give you a little handout.
Missoula floods.
Okay, great. Thank you. Also,
Brought the flood in, huh?
yeah. The Karen,
Yes.
I have copies of the articles from my book. I think it's 2 or 3 down. If you could get the copy of my Oregon Geology one,
Oh,
and
fantastic.
give that
Thank
to
you.
And so all of those, the Rogue, the Umpqua, and the Applegate, those are all very old rocks, uplift in what we call accreted terrain.
Accreted.
Yeah, ACCRETED terrain. And so all of those tie together. Those are old rocks that were islands and ocean bottom that were stuck onto North America. The Blue Mountains also, same thing. In fact, all of Oregon, there was nothing here 100 million years ago.
Huh.
And so we've just had pieces of ocean bottom stuck on and islands stuck on, but then most of it has been covered over by volcanic deposits, Columbia River basalts, the Cascades, and then but the Klamaths and the Blue Mountains still stick up through everything.
So those are ancient, and the ancient. Like
That's yours.
Yeah. Like the coastal range, though, that's a fairly.
That's just uplifted. It's just straight uplifted ocean bottom.
Is it straight uplifted, or I always pictured it as being kind of a, like the, what do you call it, the plate kind of sliding up like this.
No, because the plate's going down.
Oh, the
underneath.
plate's going down.
Right, and so what's happening is the whole area along the edge of the plate is uplifted, and so the whole ocean bottom, which is the plate subducts here. So North America is going like this. The Juan de Fuca plate's going like this. And then as it comes down, it kind of uplifts like this. And you can do that continuously. The stuff that was underneath the ocean is uplifted, and then it's what we call an anticline. It's bent like this. And so it's uplifted as the plate's going down underneath it. Nothing's going over the top.
Huh. Okay.
And so.
And that's a more recent phenomenon than the phenomenon that you were talking about.
Right.
Like
It's only 30 million years ago that started being uplifted, whereas the ages of the. Have you found any luck?
No, I found your wine articles, but not that article yet.
Well, you can give if you get a copy of one of those wine articles. I can give that to Janis. I'll look for the other ones. Okay. All right. Or maybe you could just photocopy that 14-page article. I think I'm out of it.
I think so, because you can give it to people.
Yeah. Are those extra copies?
These are extra copies.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
This is wine that's in the dirt. This is done in the PSU magazine a few years ago.
Oh, fantastic.
And then here is a copy of a poster that I presented down at the. It's all in here. So everything I showed you is here.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic.
With all the data that I've got there. Everything we've been showing you. Do you have is my red book in there? I've got one here.
No, it's not. I'll mix it up.
Okay, here. There we go. So it's the yeah. So this one, geologic and physiographic provinces.
So again, it's like that Umpqua area. Then is like, what about the soil types there?
They're all the underlying geology is really old, and it's some of it is volcanic, some of it is metamorphic, and some of it is sedimentary. In fact, down in the Applegate there is even a little granite. So, but it's very old rocks, the oldest rocks in the state, and so then the soils also they're variable. There's some that are on fairly young sediments. There's one right down there in Medford. He's right down in the valley bottom, and his soils are very, very young. Whereas most of
that's
like
the one that's real close to the freeway there.
Right, yeah.
Oh, I can't think of the guy's
it's
name.
off to the left. He has Shakespeare names. Weisinger's is above.
That's above.
Yeah,
Weisinger's is
he's
above.
old, very old rocks. He's got fossils in there that are absolutely wonderful.
Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Huh.
Who are you looking for?
Christine's office.
Oh, okay. She's up on the right-hand side, 2 doors up.
And I'm going to have something for you. I went in South Africa to something called the Terroir restaurant.
Hey, I love it.
Up in the Stellenbosch wine area.
Yes, I love that area. Did you enjoy the wines?
It was wonderful wines. I mean, I could have just stayed in South Africa and drunk wine, actually.
It was fun. I was there 2 years ago.
Yeah,
Really enjoyed it.
yeah. And I think you should take your geology students for like about a month in South Africa. What a wonderful place.
It's wonderful.
Bodacious geology.
It is, and no vegetation.
No vegetation, right?
I know.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
great.
Yeah. So anyway, well, I think I brought you a copy of the menu and a few things like that.
Great.
So, anyway,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Good to see you. So the soils are old soils. So, but there's some young. So I mean, down there,
And so where's the young soil come from then?
those are the valley bottoms.
Okay, so where's that coming from then?
It's still coming from the weathering of the
So through
of the slopes.
the rivers. And
I mean, the ultimate source of all the sediments and all the soils are very, very old rocks, and these are rocks that are between 150 million years old and 300 million years old. So excuse me.
oh, bless you.
The soils, first of all, the rocks of the Willamette Valley, the basalts are 14 to 16 million years old. The Coast Range sediments are 25 to 35 million years old. And eastern Washington, the rocks are again 14 to 16 million years old. But southern Oregon, you're dealing with rocks that are 150 million to 300 million years old. So very, very old rocks, and a great diversity. And the soils developed on top of them, that's the weathering of them, are just as old as the soils here. 500,000 to a couple million years old. But down there, you also have different minerals that are different, because some of them, there's a lot of heavy metals, cadmium and arsenic and chromium, and those are more common in the soils because it's just the origin of the soils and the age of the soils. So that area down there is completely different geologically. Climate-wise, it's warmer.
Yeah.
And so you got warmth,
But
but
there's
then
real microclimates too. Like you go up
Huge,
to
huge.
Umpqua, and I mean those guys are growing Pinot.
Right.
You know, in some of those little valleys
Right,
and stuff
right,
like that.
right,
And
right.
I can guarantee you that those puppies are cool in there.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. But the soils, but the age of the soils, there are some that are the valley bottoms which is just river deposits. The soils are less than 10,000 years old.
Well, what about like Del Rio, right there on, just off the freeway there?
Right.
So like it seems like is that part like valley bottom? Then he goes up the
then
hill.
he goes up the hill. So he's got from right the flat bottom, young soils, and then as he goes up the slope, those are his best grapes. And he's getting into some really, really good ones up. So those are onto the slopes of the really old rocks and old sediments and old soils.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah, I need to spend more time down there at Del Rio because he sells his grapes everywhere.
No kidding. I mean, all the big names up here are pulling fruit from.
I think he also is starting to make wine himself, isn't he?
Yep. Last couple of years, he has. Yeah.
So that's the big difference there. So if we look at here is a map, and this is going to be in the let's see. So if we look at Oregon, here are the Blue Mountains. Mm-hmm. Oh shoot, go back. Here are the Klamath Mountains down here. There is there's the Cascades. Mm-hmm. There's the Coast Range and the Willamette Valley. Mm-hmm. So our growing areas are primarily the Willamette Valley, and then you've got the Umpqua region, the Rogue River, and then the Applegate. And so all of those three are in the Klamath Mountains, the oldest rocks in Oregon. And then you have
the Klamath Mountains. Are they considered also like
From here, this is all Klamaths.
All that's considered.
That's the Klamath Mountains. Oh, okay. Now you have the Siskiyous.
The Siskiyous, right?
Are a sub-range within it.
Okay.
But that's all the Klamaths, and so the vineyard, three are great.
Hey, thank you very much.
So here's that. So I've divided it up: Coast Range, Klamaths, Cascade, Willamette Valley. And then the Columbia Valley and the Walla Walla Valleys are up here. Actually, the Blue Mountains, the Walla Walla has some of the oldest rocks too.
Out of the blues.
Yeah, but they've really been imprinted on top by the basalts, and so underneath you've got old, but right there it's still basalts.
There's a guy, Zerba, who's just planted a new vineyard that's just like in those little foothills of the blues. I mean, you can touch them, and it's just like it's on an old farm. They're just trying that out, and that soil. I don't know my soils or anything like that, but boy, that soil is like he irrigates, and it's like clay. It's real fine kind of soil.
Yeah.
And he's got some other vineyards more in the valley, and those are it's pure rock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, just like Bordeaux.
And also La Rioja. If you look at the soils in La Rioja, it's just you don't see dirt. I mean, there's dirt down there, but you certainly don't see it down there. Huh? That's interesting.
So you really would. So I break it up into the different provinces. So what you're really interested in the Klamath Mountains, in the Willamette Valley.
And then also like
the Deschutes.
I've also got to cover.
That's the Columbia Valley.
Like the gorge and stuff in here, and then the Walla Walla.
Right, and they're all going to be the geology is all the same: Columbia River basalts, and the Deschutes Umatilla. So what I've done is divide each one of these up. So if you want to talk about the Klamath Mountain area and the terrains and the accretion and this whole thing and the age of all of the soils, it's there, and then. The Deschutes Umatilla province with the Columbia River basalt group, the 17 to 6, but the majority of them really come out around 14 to 16. And then the Willamette Valley, here's the Willamette Valley province, and then so those are the three areas that you want.
Fantastic. Now what about like in the gorge, I was up on the pines. Oh God, I can't remember his first name. Anyway, he's got
those old vine Zinfandels.
Old vine Zin.
I tasted it first time last week.
Have you ever been up that in that
No,
area?
no.
It's incredibly steep, and I'm wondering, like, what kind of soil is he on there?
And I don't know
It
because I
is
haven't been there.
just incredibly steep.
Yeah, I haven't been there, so I can't tell you. I want to visit it, but
Yeah, it's a little bit almost deceiving. He cuts it down to the ground,
Mm-hmm.
and so like the old Zen, it's like the roots are 100 years old, but the vines are, half the size of my wrist, and so who knows how deep those roots go.
great.
Yeah, yeah.
That's incredible. I'd never even heard of this, and then one of my students brought this bottle in, and I went, "Whoa!" And it was very good.
And you got it how the one in McMinnville that does that wine, or did you get it from the Pines?
Well, he bought it from the Pines,
Okay.
but it's made in Newburgh, isn't it? Owen Rowe or one of those guys makes it. Or?
It's not Owen Rowe. Starts with an S. I've never been to that winery, but I can't think of it. As soon as I walk out of the door, I'll think of it.
Yeah.
But anyway, he advertises heavily that he's got the 100-year-old Zen.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, huh?
Oh, it is, and it's very good. Because I really love old vine Zins.
Do you?
So I do. I mean, those guys down Lodi, and you can get some really good ones for cheap prices too.
Yeah. Have you tried some up in the Gold Country? There's
Haven't.
oh, incredible stuff. And the one guy that I photographed down there, his vines were maybe like 120, 130 years old.
Yeah.
Just incredible. I mean, and they were the real vines.
Mhm.
They weren't, chopped down or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, just amazing fruit.
Yeah. Oh, you want photos too for your book?
Yeah, it was like I need
You
to
know,
illustrate this stuff.
All right,
so.
visit Willakenzie Winery, and the winemaker, he's got a nice road cut up there with the Willakenzie,
okay.
with the marine sediment sticking out, and I would, and he's the only winery named after his soil. So,
Yeah.
and he and his wife do that. So that's a great one. And I have photos, but I haven't thrown them into here. Also, Bill Stoller, a few years ago, had some very deep pits into the Jory soil there.
Uh-huh.
And he is one of these classic Jory soil ones down in Dundee Hills.
Yeah.
And so those are the two you should. But anywhere in the Dundee Hills, just taking picture on the vineyards and the red soils there. I mean, where that's coming from the irons in the basalts. The colors are.
Okay.
So those are a couple of the best ones, and then you just have the flat surface. You can look down off onto the flat surfaces, with the rolling hills of the Dundee Hills. Flat valley bottoms, that's the Missoula flood sediments. Not a good place to grow.
Okay, I've got incredible pictures, and Stoller is like I photograph up there a lot.
Yeah. And so
Just thinking is like Ponzi is building a new winery across the little valley from his house.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Really interesting is Louisa is it's either 5 or 7 clones, and she's mixed them up. So you don't know, except by the vigor of the growth and stuff like that, and you can only postulate. She didn't keep track of, what clone. It's all mixed up, and they're building a winery at the top of their vineyard up there. And he's, I know that Dick is digging a hole down there. So what kind of soil that would be?
Is it right up above? Because where their original where the winery is now, the soils that are right around there are not real great. I mean, those are Missoula flood sediments.
Okay. No, this is up higher, and I know that they're excavating a trench for, I think it was electrical or something like that. And they pulled out like these big round rocks, big round red rocks, and they looked like they had been tumbled for a while. And I just
Wonder what elevation.
I'm guessing now. I can't remember exactly. Let's see. It's lower than us, so I'd say 400 feet.
Yeah, well,
Or
then
300 feet,
all right.
400 feet. I mean, he's on a pretty good slope, and it's
okay.
probably like 150 to maybe almost 200 feet from the bottom to the
So
top.
I was just out at Ponzi 2 Sundays ago.
Yeah, but this is on Mountain Home Road.
Yeah, Mountain Home Road.
And that's, let's see, what are some landmarks? There's not really.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter. We have two choices for those big rounded boulders. And if you had said 900 feet elevation, then
No, he's not that high.
All right. Well, 300, 400, that's the height of the Missoula floods, and so we'd have to identify him. Yeah, I wonder if he still has those boulders.
Yes, he does.
Well, I'll just have to go out there and look.
And
His
actually,
daughter went to Portland State. She's a PSU alum.
Oh, which one?
Louisa.
Louisa?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Huh.
So
Yeah.
we had a PSU alumni wine tasting tour because it was
fantastic.
2 weekends ago, and so Bill Stoller got his master's here and was president of the foundation, and then we went to Sokol-Blosser, and Susan Sokol-Blosser went to college with me at Stanford, but
really,
but the two kids, Alex and his sister Allison, I think,
Allison.
both went to Portland State. In fact, Alex has got 2 degrees from Portland State.
Is that
He was
right?
the editor of the student newspaper.
Huh.
And then we went to Ponzi.
Uh-huh.
So they were so busy. They were trying to get the crop in, and it being a cool summer. So I would have to go and see these boulders, because if they're granites, then they're brought in by the Missoula floods.
I don't know. I know granite because I used to hike in the Sierras a lot.
Right. Yeah.
They don't seem like they're granite, but again, it's like they're all red and really round.
Yeah, they're probably what we call spheroidally weathered boulders, and it's a weathering phenomenon in the basalt. So.
And so how are they made round then?
Well, originally all of the basalt flow was solid, but it had cracks in it. Cracks this way, cracks this way, cracks this way. Water gets down in and it weathers along the cracks.
Okay.
And so it weathers into a core stone. And then the weather, over 15 million years, the surface weathers down and releases those big core stones.
Huh, that's interesting. It'd be interesting to hear what you have to say. Dick Ponzi thought that they were brought in by the Missoula floods.
Yeah, well, see, that's why you have to look at them and see what they are.
Yeah.
If they're basalt, if they're the Columbia River basalts there, then it's spheroidally weathered in place boulders from the basalt. But if it's something different, if it's a metamorphic rock or sandstone or granite or something like that, then Missoula flood, because he's right at the elevation where it could be.
Huh.
So
Yeah. Well,
so
that's
you
interesting.
live out near him?
Well, sort of near there. It's like we live. Our address is technically Sherwood, but we live in the west side and the hills above Sherwood. Right,
Yeah.
we live right at 800 feet.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you ever get out there, I'll make a mental note to go out and see if I can see those. But
Yeah, give him a call, and they're just right. He's got them just along the fence line there, so you can see them right from thing. And he's got it like gated and stuff.
Yeah.
But I can give you his email address or his phone number.
I
or
can
something.
just call him up. So.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. And he's kind of retired, so he'd love to talk with you about.
Well, he
that.
was working hard when we were out there. He was driving the forklift and the tractor when I was out there. Of course, they needed everybody to work.
Yeah. One of the interesting things that I'm trying to do is like I'm looking at it's not passing the baton, but like the relationship between the parents that started the first generation and the second generation. Like the Letts, Ponzi, Campbell. Gosh, I'm getting some really interesting stories because I'm putting them together and then just letting them kind of interact. And man, it's like the dynamics are very, very interesting.
So David Lett's son is now
Jason.
I've never met him. So
really a nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
Really a nice guy. Real bright.
Yeah. I mean, we started with 2 Dicks and 2 Daves.
Yeah.
David Adelsheim, another PSU alum, David Lett.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and then Dick Ponzi and Dick Erath. So the first 4.
Yeah.
And then
well, actually, it's like I think that of the modern, it's like there's 2 guys that I think are. There's a Richard Summer down he is in Roseburg, and his winery is Hillcrest out of Roseburg. He was the first guy in the post-Prohibition that really planted vines, and a guy out of Napa bought his vineyards and his winery and stuff, and that guy's a purist like you are. No irrigation down there. He's planted his vines, and he is not irrigating new vines. He's not irrigating those puppies at all because he wants to really stress them out. And then Richard Summer is a really interesting guy to talk to.
He's not making wines anymore. He's sold.
No, he's kind of he's out. Yeah, there's some tragic stories there and stuff like that, but he's out of it. But boy, I spent a day and a half with him just going out to the vineyards during harvest. Even the pickers know him because they used to pick for him or they know of him and stuff like that. I mean, he's a legend.
Never heard of him. So.
Yeah, and that's why one of the things I'm going to bring up in this book is like we hear so much about Let. Important, but his most important thing is because he won that the competition
Pinot, right.
against the French,
Right.
and that was his importance. But he talked to Summer.
Oh, I see.
Before he started, but he doesn't talk much, and same with Dick Erath. But they don't give credit to to Summer. And then there's another guy up here, a guy named Cooley, that planted prior to Let, also.
And what vineyard has that become?
David Hill.
Oh, David Hill, yeah.
Yeah. And there was actually a vineyard prior to Prohibition up there. Reuter, Reuter, although one guy spells it Rueter, a German guy, and he planted some German varietals up there. But Prohibition kind of wiped him out.
Yeah. I think Champoeg Winery also has some very old vines.
Do they?
Yeah. They told me one time that they had up at a certain place in the vineyard they had some very, very old vines.
Like it from the 60s or
No,
even prior to that?
probably Prohibition time.
Really?
Yeah,
Huh. Champoeg, that's the one out by
Champoeg Park.
Park
Yeah.
there. Yeah, I've never been to that one.
Yeah, nice little winery.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Let me check, make sure that.
So that's my story.
Well, and so what soil produces like the best Pinot Gris?
Nobody has really looked at that. Both of them.
Both of them. Why would you say that?
Because trying to think who my favorites are. Yeah.
I'll be back in just
Okay, great. They're on all of them. They're on both the Willackensies and Jories. And nobody is actually. Nobody has really started, asking the question as much as there are two grapes that are transparent, that the terroir comes through. One is Riesling and the other is Pinot Noir.
Well, Riesling is the next one I'm going to ask you about.
And I would imagine that the Pinot Blancs and the Pinot Gris are also in with the Pinot Noir and being transparent. But we've never done tastings between them, and so it's not a question that's popped up yet. But we probably should start addressing that and looking at it.
Yeah,
we haven't done.
Well,
that.
we're so here in the Willamette Valley, we're so overwhelmed. I'm trying to make this Oregon book kind of a classic, so I'm thinking 15 and 20 years out, and so I'm looking at Pinot Gris, and I'm also looking at Riesling. I'm kind of guessing what's.
Riesling's coming back.
Yeah,
and the reason is because the terroir. I mean, you can have two vineyards, same winemaker, all the factors the same except the soils, and they're completely different if the soil types are different.
Yeah.
And so people are getting in dry Rieslings. The normal traditional 2% residual sugar Rieslings from Germany, not as much, but people like the dry Rieslings, and they're coming back and they're buying the bottles and then tasting the different terroirs. And they're tasting the geology because everything else is basically the same. So Riesling and Pinot and the Pinot grapes are going to be big. And so I see wine tasting in Oregon being a terroir-driven thing, and especially geology-driven thing. And people enjoy that.
I know I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so so I've had geologist friends who have borrowed my PowerPoint, and they'll invite people over and have Elk Cove and it's Willackensie and Jory type soils and taste the ones, and it's a great evening.
Yeah,
a good
sure.
dinner, and then also Chehalem, for instance, winery, Harry Peterson. Nedry. He's got he uses Stoller vineyards, which is Jory, and then his Ridgecrest vineyard is pure Willackenzie. And so...
what about his little, the
Coral
coral...
it is combination, it's actually Laurelwood, which is the third one.
Really?
And so you can test the big three. I should do that. So
that's interesting.
yeah, it's a Laurelwood, and but I always just do the two big ones, and then Anami also has Jories and Willakenzies, and their Rainbow Ridge. One is the Anami, and then I think
which one is Rainbow Ridge?
That's the vineyard that they buy from.
Oh, they buy from. Okay, I don't know that vineyard.
Yeah. The old owner, one of the old co-owners of Anami, he still owns those. It's the Davidson family. No, I'm trying to remember his name. Can't remember.
And they sold out to
Robert Pamplin.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So those are two wineries that I taste. I go and buy them, and then actually when I was at Chehalem the other night. They gave me two sets, 75 and 73.
From the same vineyard?
Yes. No, I mean, with the two, Stoller versus Ridgecrest.
Oh, okay.
But then we could also taste hot climate and cool climate. 05 was a very cool summer. 03 was the hot one. And so you can also taste the difference in the climate.
Yeah.
And so you got to compare the same vineyard. So Ridgecrest versus Ridgecrest, or Stoller versus Stoller, and then this year the 07s are going to be just like the 05s, cool. And then you could also go Ridgecrest versus Stoller. So it's kind of fun.
When I first got interested in this, and that's why I'm really enjoying what you're saying, is like I was at Bethel Heights.
Yeah.
And gosh, this was like 7 years ago or something like that. And I was out doing a little shoot out there, and finally at the end of the day they said, "Oh yeah, try some of our wines." And so they gave me two Pinots, one block, the other block, and there's only a little road separating those two blocks. It's kind of like your French thing, and you could taste the difference.
That's the terroir.
Yeah, and that's where I thought
terroir is
this
the taste of the place.
Yeah,
taste of the place, and so all the other factors are the same. Same winemaker, same vineyard techniques, same grape, same climate.
The one variable I forgot to ask him about was yeast. Because I don't know what the winemaker does with
most
with
of the
yeast
time they try it. They get a good one and they stay with it. So
yeah.
So that's a winemaking technique thing.
Yeah.
But and so now, see, back in the early '90s, all of the Pinot guys, Rex Hills, the Adelsheims, they would pick they picked by the block. Okay, so each block was different, and then they taste the barrels, and they would say this is great, this is great, this is great, and then they blend those together into what they call their top one, and then they would blend the next level into another one, and then the remaining ones was their average one, Willamette Valley. Now what they're doing is people want to know those. They are taking those blocks and the great ones year after year. They're just bottling those up, and that's a single vineyard designate.
Yeah.
And that's been a big change that I've seen in the last 15 years, because people find a vineyard, and year after year after year it's producing, and it's the terroirs, the soil, and the combination of the climate, the soil, and everything together.
Yeah.
And so you're seeing more of the Adelsheims going back to that, Rex Hill's going back to that, and they've gotten rid of all that super blending that they did.
Yeah.
Because why? It's the terroir. People were wanting and craving for these differences, and they love tasting the two differences.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the marine sediments versus the volcanic soils, the Willakenzie versus the Jory.
Yeah.
And when I talk about Willakenzie, I'm talking about the cousins. I mean, there are a lot of ones that are very, very close, and in the Jory, they're being remapped, and they're still they're close cousins, but they may have a different name, but they're still Jory. So it's fun to taste those differences. But the real big differences are marine sediments versus the volcanic. And then the Laurelwood, the third one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I can taste the difference between two adjoining blocks, You know, like that's pretty fun. And at that time, it's like my palate was
Bethel,
uninformed.
Bethel Heights, I bet you it's the depth of the soil. It's the Nakaya versus the Jory. Down there in the Eola Hills, some places the soils are 8-9 feet deep. In other places, they're 2 feet deep. And it could be that is one of the places that it's very, very thin and very thick. And that was the difference there, Jory versus Nakaya.
Huh.
And that's one thing that we find down in the Eola Hills.
Well, so that actually made quite a bit of difference then.
Yeah. And so those roots have gone right straight through in the Nakaya, right through the soil, and they're down 15, 20 feet down there into the bedrock.
One last question. In our neighborhood, we've got 2 37 measure guys that are building subdivisions. Mm-hmm. And all of us neighbors are concerned about water in that
huge
area.
Question.
And no one knows how much is under there. But, you know, like...
Which are you on Chehalem Mountain?
Yeah, it's on Chehalem Mountain, on the, the Highway 99 side of Chehalem Mountain. And, all the water's in that basalt. And I'm trying to visualize, like, what that basalt is like. It's like, how compact is that basalt? And then I'm also trying to visualize, like, the aquifers, under there.
Yeah.
Because, like, some of the neighbors are concerned because, like, their wells are 125 feet. And then, like, they're digging now at 600 and 800 feet in that area.
I live out between Wilsonville and Tualatin, and there's a major... we're on basalt, too.
Okay.
And there's a guy wants to put in 25 home sites across the road, and we're zoned, 5-acre lots. And the groundwater is a huge thing. There isn't enough water. I mean, my neighbor's well went dry 4 years ago.
Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there isn't enough water.
What level was he?
He was 350. I'm 460 or something like that.
Well, I'm trying to visualize.
Oh, what it is, you got basalt flow on top of flow on top of flow.
Right.
The aquifers are at the top of the flow where you have vesicles, lots of bubble as the flow comes in.
Okay, that makes sense. Like it's like
vesicles.
gravelly.
No, it's just there are lots of holes. Well, here, all the holes. The tops of the flows look like this.
Okay.
The bottoms of the flows.
Well, now how?
The same basalt looks like that.
Oh, okay. All
so
right.
the bottom of the flow, there's no aquifer. The top of the flow is where the aquifer is. And so when you're drilling down, you're eventually hitting the top of the flow, which was maybe 10, 15 feet thick.
Okay.
And then you hit your water. And the water is all in those little holes, the vesicles.
Okay.
And
so that's a real porous level.
Right, it's a porous level.
And all those layers are they wouldn't intersect.
Right.
They would be all continuous.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that like the guy at 125 feet or whatever.
Yeah.
Like his level is here, and that doesn't somehow the question is like the guy that goes down 600 or 800 feet, can he be pulling water from the guy that's 125 feet? So that the answer to that is yes. Mm-hmm. Even without like the shafts and stuff like that, they're supposed to steel encase and stuff.
Right.
Through the porous.
I mean, sometimes there is interconnection between them.
Okay.
It may not be directly here. It may be way down here where they pinch out together and then they feed in. But the big thing is in areas like where both of us live is that there's just not enough water. Chehalem Mountain doesn't have enough water. If you go to Parrot Mountain, they even have less water. Mm-hmm. And then the area where I live also, there just isn't enough water. And so we're going to fight our guy by getting hiring a groundwater firm to figure out how much water is there. Because if you have 30, 40 houses going in, 30, 40 wells going in, there is not going to be enough water.
That's exactly what we have.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
And I can't believe that the county commissioners would even allow this, or the planning.
And I talk to them, and they say they have no jurisdiction, and there's no laws. You can get a permit to dig a well, or you don't even have to have a permit to dig a well that pulls 15,000 gallons, per day. You don't even need a permit. Just go out and drill it.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, so like there's no oversight.
Right. And there should be.
Yeah. And then at first when I started looking at this, I got pretty uptight about it. The county guy said, "Oh yeah, you got to talk to the state." And then he said, "Well, if you bring us, if you put in a complaint, then we'll investigate." But they don't do any kind of investigation. They have no resources to investigate.
Yeah.
They have no expertise to do that, and they're totally relying on the state. I talked to the state guys, and they say, "Oh, we've got these test wells out there," and that's all anecdotal evidence, like the test wells, because like they only tell you like what's happening now. They don't tell you like what like how much you can pull.
Right. As everybody pulls it down, you're just going to drop the water tables, and a lot of wells are going to go dry.
Yeah.
And those guys with very shallow wells, like the 100-footers, they're going to be dry.
Yeah. Huh.
And so it's stupid that the counties are not asking that question.
Yeah.
It's just they're not asking those questions.
Yeah.
And as those wells go in, people are going to be running dry.
Yeah. And those new houses, like the houses that they're going to build, they're going to those big mansions.
Mm-hmm.
And those guys have the money to go down to 600, 800
Mm-hmm.
feet. We're fortunate. We're down at 600 feet.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if that makes any difference. So I still kind of, I'm trying to visualize what it's like under there. I have the feeling that they're really
It's just
interconnected.
flow upon flow upon flow.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you go way down there, you may be getting water that is laterally coming from the Tualatin River or the Willamette River, and it gets into some of those lower flows.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so it just depends.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting issue.
Oh, it is. It
Yeah.
is. I'm just hoping that Measure 49 passes. So.
Oh gosh, I do too.
I've never seen more lies in the anti-vote no on 49. I mean, I received a printout of all these people. I'm so-and-so on my life savings. All false.
I want to call them up
Yeah.
and ask them, what do you mean your lifestyle is going to change? What exactly does that mean?
Or your life savings, and they're taking away, and they aren't taking anything away. They still have the land and the value of the land. I mean, I've never heard more lies in my life, and there's nothing that the Attorney General is doing to stop these things. I mean,
Yeah.
so
We had a neighborhood meeting, and the two guys that wanted to do the development, it's like, they laid it on us so thick, and I because I hadn't read the measure and all that kind of stuff, and I went through point by point, but eventually I just kind of gave up. Because like they would say, well, did you know that that they lied here and here and here, and they just want it so bad. They want that stuff, the subdivision.